Welcome to On the Middle East, the podcast of the award-winning media service Al Monitor, where each week we talk with the decision makers and thought leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in the Middle East. I'm Andrew Parasolidi, president of Al Monitor, and this week we'll be talking about how the peace agreements between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain are being perceived among Israel's nearly 2 million Arab citizens. Our guest is Al Monitor contributor and tech entrepreneur, Afif Abu Much. He is an Arab citizen of Israel, and he will be joining us after this short break.
For the Arab people here, is that you could not be part of the Arab world because of your citizenship. These agreements open for you the gate to contact the Arab world, and maybe in the future, maybe to be the connection point between the Israeli institutes here and the Arabs and the Arab world. I think it's a good news. Not all Israeli Arabs are glad with these agreements. It depends on your opinion or attitude regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
That was Afif Abu Much, who will join us in just a few minutes. Before he does, let me share my thoughts on the signing of the peace agreements this week between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. A Middle East peace deal is a rare bird in U.S. foreign policy, and Trump just bagged one. Middle East peace efforts have more often ended with frustration rather than signing ceremonies at the White House. In fact, there were only 3 such ceremonies over the previous 4 decades until this week, with Egypt in 1978, with the PLO in 1993, and with Jordan in 1994. Trump, it seems, has set his critics back, at least for a day. It's hard to square accusations of being unfit for office, per the revelations in Bob Woodward's new book, Rage, with a Middle East peace deal involving Israel and 2 Arab states, with the prospect of more to come. And if there are more to come, that means we may be witnessing not necessarily just a peace deal, but a possible trend. The Abraham Accords, as they're called, also signal that Trump's art of the deal can be well suited to the Middle East. The region is more transactional than institutional in its foreign policy dealings compared to Europe and NATO, for example. And relationships at the leadership level, of course, always critical in diplomacy, seem to matter even more in the Middle East, which Trump gets. Now, Trump's Democratic opponent, former Vice President Joe Biden, has welcomed the Abraham Accords and promises to build on them if elected. Biden, too, has a personal touch as well as lots of respect in the region, and a stellar record as a statesman, as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and as vice president. Now, among the many differences with Trump, if Biden were to win election, he would likely also convey concerns about human rights and arms sales to U.S. partners and allies in the region. These concerns have been increasingly raised by Democrats in the Congress, and Trump has not been inclined to raise those issues. Biden probably likely to do so. The bottom line is that a second Trump term or a first Biden term would have to deal with a new reality and realignment established with the peace agreements this week. Now, let's turn to our conversation with Afif Abu Much. As I mentioned earlier, Afif is an Arab citizen of Israel. So he is, in a sense, both Israeli and Palestinian. And that will come across in his comments as it does in his Al Monitor articles. His is a fascinating and critical take on Israel, the peace accords, and the region, and one not widely heard, especially in the Western media, except for those of you who are reading Al Monitor, of course. His comments today convey optimism about the peace accords, which will allow Israel's Arabs who have not been able to travel to Gulf countries on an Israeli passport the chance to visit the UAE and Bahrain, engage with the people there culturally, personally, and in business. Afif even believes Israel's Arabs can be a gateway in these new relationships for Israel. Afif will also tell us about his and many Israeli Arabs' commitment to full integration in Israeli society, how he and other Israeli Arabs feel frozen out of Israeli politics, marginalized deliberately by Prime Minister Netanyahu and others in the political establishment, and how the Arab political parties in the Knesset, the so-called joint list, seem to want to maintain this separation. Our conversation with Afif Abu Much, who is joining us from Baqa al-Gharbiya, a town in the Haifa district in Israel, begins now. Afif, welcome to On the Middle East.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you, and it's my pleasure to take part in your podcast.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Now, let's get right into it. You are an Arab citizen of Israel, and to remind our listeners, there are approximately 8.5 million Israeli citizens, and about 1.9 million are Arabs. That's about 20% of the population. And of course, there's another 5 million or so Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Tell us a little about your background, where you live in Israel, and whether you consider your primary identity Israeli, Arab, or Palestinian.
I'm an Arab Israeli citizen. I live in Baqa al-Gharbiya city in Israel. Actually, I am a monitor contributor as well as a computer engineer. Regarding your question about my primary identity, actually, I always wondered why this question is raised just in case of Arab Israeli citizens. But let me answer you that I consider myself, first of all, as a human. I am an Arab Israeli who is originally a Palestinian, but I'm not sure that I can consider myself today as a Palestinian because I live in Israel. I have an Israeli citizenship. I do everything for integration the Arab community in Israel state. At the same time, let me say that to be an Arab Israeli citizen, it's a little bit complicated. You are originally Palestinian. Your parents, your grandfathers, and etc. Grandparents, sorry, and etc. So the situation is a little bit complicated, but the youth today in Israel, I mean, Arab society, Arab community, most of them want to be integrated in Israel. They wish and they work on full integration to feel Israeli for everything. But at the same time, you cannot feel that from the Israeli side. I mean, the institutes in Israel and government, and etc., they always grant you the feeling that you are, as an Arab Israeli citizen, you are not part of us. You are outsider. Trust me, this is a bad feeling.
How do you describe the relationship generally between Arab citizens of Israel and Palestinians who live under the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza?
Okay, let me share with you a study which was published recently by the Israel Democracy Institute. It points that only 13% of Arab Israeli citizens define themselves as Palestinians. So this can indicate about the relationships between the Arab citizens here and the Arabs in the West Bank, and of course Hamas in Gaza. I don't think that there are any relations between the Arabs here and Hamas in Gaza. I don't see that there are a lot of Arabs who support Hamas in Gaza and etc. They are tired of the conflict between Hamas and Fatah. So I'm not sure that Arab here they'll feel. I'm talking about most of the Arabs. Sometimes you will meet a person here, person there, that he defines himself as a Palestinian. I just last week interviewed for Monitor a person like that who said that, first of all, I'm Palestinian. And this is why I reject the deal with the Emiratis. Today, as I have said, most of the Arabs want full integration, want to be part of the government, by the way.
You raised the joint list, and to remind our listeners, the joint list is the Arab parties in the Israeli Knesset. The list won 15 seats in the last election with 12.6% of the vote this year. And it was the third largest party in the Knesset until Yesh Atid split off from blue and white to lead the opposition. So the way I kind of described it is it's in some ways been the best of times and the worst of times for the Arab parties, to quote Dickens. So is that how you see it? And how do you assess this progress and accomplishment in terms of the vote and its role with this political situation you're describing?
Actually, it's a little bit complicated because, as you have said, on one hand, the joint list achieved a record voter turnout and got 15 seats in the last election. But on the other hand, you know that it doesn't matter how many seats the joint list will get, it will be part of the opposition. It will not join the coalition. Sometimes, actually, I have the feeling that the joint list is like a private club or a closed club, which is more an economic project rather than a political project.
Let's turn to the news of the week, which is the Abraham Accords and the signing of the peace agreement at the White House on Tuesday between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Israel, a deal brokered by the United States. And you've written a fascinating piece for Al Monitor where you concluded that the peace agreement has forced a kind of identity crisis, as you described it, for Arab citizens of Israel. You said that while the peace may have, sidelined Palestinians, and there are some of the political issues you've been discussing here, there are also opportunities for Israel's Arab citizens in terms of their ability now to engage the Arab states, the UAE, Bahrain, and to do a business. You're in the tech sector. There could be business opportunities and opportunities in general for exchanges and investment and commerce. Tell us about that kind of tension you were describing in identity issues and the opportunities as you see, including in the tech world where you work.
As I wrote in my article, the Israeli Arabs split over the agreements with the Emiratis and Bahrain. So we can see that there are people who see in these agreements an opportunity to be part of the Arab world, something that has been denied them until now because their Israeli citizenship and the Israeli passport. But at the same time, there are some Israeli Arabs who reject the deal, as I have said before, because it does not include establishing a Palestinian state and ignoring the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and etc. If we talk about the opportunity, one of the, let's say, disadvantages of Israeli citizenship as for the Arab people here is that you could not be part of the Arab world because of your citizenship. So these agreements open for you the gate to contact the Arab world and maybe in the future, maybe to be the connection point between the Israeli institutes here and Arabs in the Arab world. Regarding opportunities, I have interviewed an artist, told me that this agreement can grant him an opportunity, for example, to take part in some famous singers in the Arab world bands, to be part of their bands, for example. Until now, we could not do that. For example, if in my work, and as I've told you, I'm a software engineer also, in addition to being a monitor contributor. So this opens for me an opportunity maybe for relocation in the future, and maybe to make more money, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I don't know. I think it's a good news. It's good news, but as I've said, not all Israeli Arabs are glad with these agreements. It depends on your opinion or attitude regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Afif, what would you like to see happen next? We've had the signings. Would you like to see more normalization with other Arab states in Israel? Would you like to see the Palestinian Authority begin direct talks in maybe the context of a new regional initiative to engage and work toward an agreement there between Israelis and the Palestinians? What do you see happening, and are you optimistic about these next steps?
I think that it depends on the USA election in November. At the same time, it depends on Iran. These agreements yesterday can trigger the Palestinians maybe to end the conflict between Hamas and Fatah, or between Gaza and Ramallah. Because sometimes you feel that Arab world and even the Arabs here are tired of this conflict, and it does not help them to end the occupation and establish their own state. But as I have said, never say never. We can see maybe more normalization processes of small countries, but not of the leaders of the Arab world.
Afif, thank you for taking the time today. This was a fascinating conversation, wonderful perspective on the historic peace deal that was signed this week. We appreciate your taking the time and your contributions to Al Monitor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Have a nice day.
We'll be right back after this short break. If you're listening to this podcast, you obviously care about the Middle East, and if you do, you should probably be reading Al Monitor. Al Monitor is a global newsroom headquartered in Washington, D.C., with a network of over 160 contributors around the world. Al Monitor offers first-class reporting and analysis from a range of perspectives, and an approach that represents the highest journalistic standards, as well as an award-winning commitment to press freedom and independence. If you haven't done so already, visit us at almonitor.com, check out our articles, and sign up for our free newsletters. There's a lot to choose from, including the Week in Review, an essay that offers unusual insights and forecasts into the region based upon Al Monitor's outstanding reporting. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our Al Monitor podcast on your favorite podcast platform. On Israel with Ben Caspit, and on the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasalidi. Thank you all for listening to On the Middle East. I'm Andrew Parasalidi. We'll be back next week. And in the meantime, please sign up for this and our other Al Monitor podcast, On Israel with Ben Caspit, at your favorite podcast platform.